Well, this is not easy one to do, especially with today. Everything with Shad Gaspard on top of watching the Owen Hart Dark Side of the Ring episode. And before we get into the review, I just want to thank you guys for if you stuck around throughout the whole entire season of Dark Side of the Ring with me. I want to thank you guys because, well, this series was it was brutal, and I did it on a whim after watching the New Jack episode, and I decided this was the kind of stuff that needed to be covered, and I wanted to talk about it. So thank you guys for sticking with me. If you been here through the New Jack episode up until now, to the Owen Hart season finale of Dark Side of the Ring. So without further ado, oh God, let's get into it. So they talk about how Owen Hart was born into the Hart dynasty, which was obviously one of the most prestigious wrestling dynasties in the world, with so many people of the members of the Hart dynasty and the Hart family going on to have such great and massive success. Probably the most successful one. Not probably the most successful one out of all of them was, of course, Bret Hart, but all of the Harts that were wrestling had tremendous amounts of success. Even people that married into the family were having tremendous amount of success. And Owen Hart was the youngest of the Harts, of the Hart boys, and of course he himself would get into the wrestling business. Martha Hart is interviewed, and of course, she's a key part to the story, and well, she's a very controversial figure, controversial amongst not just wrestling fans, but for what we'll get into later about her and issues with the other members of the Hart family. But one thing was very clear. That was made very clear. It was the fact that Owen absolutely loved his family, and that Owen was one of the most caring guys that you could ever meet. There was a story that Mick Foley once told about how Owen Hart had a huge amount of trust for people, and that he could potentially just go out and like a stranger. I believe a stranger picked him up once, and Owen stayed with that stranger for a night, and Mick Foley was told this story, and he was like, you weren't afraid you were going to get killed or anything like that? And Owen Hart's like, no, because he trusted people that much, and he loved people. They also tell a story about how Oj Hart, who is Owen's son, they said he grew up and he loved trains. And he was saying that every year a train show would come to Calgary, and Oj wanted to go with his father. And, the life of a professional wrestler is very busy. You're going from town to town. You are wrestling all over the place. But Owen knew that his son really wanted to go, and this meant a lot to him. So he essentially had a book trip that he was going on to, and they rebooked it just so he could put his son first, and he could go to that train event with his son, which is something you don't hear a lot of wrestlers doing. Like, there are wrestlers that love their family, but they put the business first. But Owen was not afraid to put his family first. They were talking about how Owen didn't want to have this long active career that goes on for years and years, sort of like how Ric Flair had his career up until he was like 60. He didn't want any of that. He just wanted to make enough money and then get out of the business, sort of like how Mr. Perfect had once told Brock Lesnar the phrase "get in to get out," and that's what Owen wanted to do. He would get in to get out. And he officially signed with the WWE at the age of 23. And he started off as the Blue Blazer. And it's a campy superhero type gimmick, and like at the time, the WWE was known for campy gimmicks, but slowly after everything with the Blue Blazer, he finally gets the opportunity of a lifetime when he turns heel against Bret Hart, turning on him on Survivor Series, leading up to their WrestleMania 10 match, which is, if you haven't seen their WrestleMania 10 match, you need to watch it. It's just absolutely phenomenal. It's a great match. Even their match at SummerSlam, the steel cage match for the WWE title, is a phenomenal match. And JR was saying that this was, this was Bret Hart's way of getting Owen over, because Bret at that point was already an established star. He had already won the world title, and he was already a big name. And that, by putting Owen over that night, that was the way to get him to be a big star, and he was already on his way. It's just, wow. It's just a, it's a shame. But so as as Owen is getting bigger and bigger, and his star power is just getting bigger and brighter, so does the schedule. The schedule starts to get more and more hectic, and he's spending less and less time at home, and he's spending more time away from his family so that he can wrestle. So Owen Hart, there's tape of him talking to the camera, and he says that it sucks, but hopefully his bruises and the bumps, that hopefully it'll all be worth it for his kids. And then they get into the Montreal Screwjob, because you can't mention a Hart without mentioning the Screwjob. So when everything happened, they show Owen, consoling his brother, saying oh, none of this, just forget about them, none of this matters, and stuff like that. Owen was trying to console his brother after what, after everything that just happened. And naturally, the Harts were prematurely against WWE. They're like, you screwed us. You screwed us. So, we don't want anything to do with you. And of course, this was not the best PR move for WWE, as people were seeing the company as, negative for what they had done after they screwed someone out of the title. So they were quick to sign Owen to a new contract. And Owen, they knew it was because of the screw job, but, it just happened to work out for, Owen's benefit, that he was getting this new contract, and they were talking about how he was really up and coming, and that this was sort of his moment to shine, that this was his moment, to make the best out of a bad opportunity. But they did not count on something else, and that was the Attitude Era was coming in. So a lot of the raunchy characters like Val Venus, Degeneration X were just coming in, and they quickly realized that they had no idea what to do with Owen Hart, because, well, Owen Hart didn't really have a character. He had no character other than the fact that he was just this really great wrestler. They tried throwing a bunch of storylines to see what would stick. They put him in storyline, which Owen was not a huge fan of the storylines that were given to him, including one where he was supposed to be with Deborah McMichael, but he didn't want to look like he was cheating on his wife to the national audience. So he was also, you could tell he was getting frustrated, because here's this great wrestler, but WWE Creative has nothing for them. They have no idea what to do with him. And Owen Hart, he needed a character to fit in with his brand new era of professional wrestling that was coming in. And so they brought up the idea of bringing back the Blue Blazer as a comedy act. And Owen was fine with it. He was all right with it, since, it wasn't going to make his family look bad at all. But despite their efforts to try and get the Blue Blazer over, it wasn't working. It would fall flat a lot of the time. And, so we're sort of going to get into the nitty gritty here. They had when the revival of the Blue Blazer came along, they had done like him coming down from the ceiling before, and it was sort of a knock on Sting, who would, he would come down from the rafters and he would look cool doing it, and this was their way of sort of making fun of it, because Owen would do the exact same thing, but he got stuck. And that would be like the rib, was that they were trying to make fun of Sting and stick it to WCW. The company that rigged Owen and that rigged him in the past whenever he had done it, they were a reputable name. And they had worked with the Rolling Stones, they had worked with Elton John, they had worked with a lot of top names in not just wrestling, but like in the world. They worked with a lot of top names. So naturally, Owen was like, he was safe with them. He was safe with them, and he felt like content that, his life wouldn't be at risk. They also talk about how Martha got a call from WWE saying that they needed some measurements from Owen for a harness that they were going to do, because they were going to drop him down. But they needed to do his measurements. And Martha was all like, oh, why didn't you he was just with you guys, like, not too long ago. Why didn't you get his measurements then? And they said, oh, it's because, like, we just thought of this right now. Like, this is an idea that just came up. And so we now arrive to the date. May 22nd, 1999, the Over the Edge pay-per-view. The day before the event, Owen took his son to the airport, to go with him. And his final words to his son was, take care of your mom and take care of your sister. Eerie, especially with what would happen. So they're going through the events of that day. And JR senses that Owen was not his usual self. And it was more the fact that the reason why he wasn't like himself was because of the fact he did not want to go through with a stunt. He did not like it at all. There is this great audio documentary. If you haven't heard it, you need to listen to it, because it talks about it talks about a lot of details going into that specific day, along with the fact that someone else was supposed to be with Owen Hart strapped on. It was like a midget wrestler, I think. But Post Wrestling did audio documentary. If you haven't heard it, go ahead and check it out. Owen did not want to go through with this stunt at all. He really did not. They talk in the audio documentary by Post Wrestling. They say about how Owen earlier in the day tried to basically get out of it by leaving the arena, and trying to, like, they can't do it if they can't rehearse it. They can't do the stunt if they haven't rehearsed it. So he was with someone, and he received a call from Vince. And Vince basically told him, after a phone call, that he can either come back and rehearse the spot, or he wasn't going to have a job at all. So there is more information on on the audio documentary. I suggest you check it out. Post Wrestling. That goes into a lot of detail about that day. So D'Lo Brown, who was there, he was wrestling. He said that he was first match on the card, and that Owen was probably the third or the fourth match on the card. So as the match with D'Lo is going on, Owen goes up to the rafters on the catwalk and gets ready for his spot. He's all geared up with his blue blazer, costume and everything like that, and he's just waiting for his cue. JR and King, who are calling the match, they're getting ready, and Lawler gives JR an elbow, to look up, and that's when JR sees it. He sees Owen falling, and referee Jim Corderas, who's the referee for that match, he said that he felt like a brush. He felt a brush near his body, and the rope that he was holding basically went up and then down, like down and up. It went out of his hand, and the reason he felt that brush near his body was because Owen had landed right next to him. And when it was happening, this was a live pay-per-view. They weren't showing the ring. They were panning to the audience, and that caused a lot of people to to be like, something's wrong, and something was very much so indeed wrong. And they were people backstage were telling JR, to update the audience, but he had no updatable material at all whatsoever. So he's just talking about this, and he's just essentially buying time until they get Owen the help that he needs. They also, talk about Lawler. Lawler, he looked like a ghost. They said he looked as white as a ghost. And they show his, reaction to it. And it's scary to look at. It really is scary to look at. Because you can tell by Jerry's face, who is usually chipper and, happy and everything like that, that he just saw something. He just saw someone die in front of his eyes. It's just scary to look at. And this is, of course, brings up the controversial aspect of it, of whether they should have stopped the show at all. Some people, will always say that they should have stopped the show like right away, but I don't know. I don't think there are certain situations in life that you can say, oh yeah, I would definitely do that, or I wouldn't do that. But a lot of times in life, there are certain situations that we won't know how we will react. We think we know how we will react, but we don't know really how we will react unless we are put in that situation itself. That's the way I view it. But what I can't condone is what happened next. So Kevin Dunn, he thought that JR was informed about what the medical update was, so he could tell the crowd at home. And JR said, I don't know the situation. What is it? And Kevin Dunn says, he's dead. And he said he's dead. And you're back in 10, 9, counting down to when they would be back on television. That right there is something I cannot get behind. That is just totally fucking despicable. The way that it seems, just from hearing that alone, it makes it seem as though he's dead. Let them know, and then we're going to continue on with the show, and the show's going to be great and stuff like that, that they were just like disregarding this whole entire thing. It's that is what a guy has died, and you're expecting to go back on television because you don't want to lose money. Like I said, that's fucking despicable. So JR, he has to let the people know. And keep in mind, this is him hearing the news for the first time as well. Him hearing the news for the first time as well. And he doesn't know how to react. He doesn't know. He only had 10 seconds to process it, and then to tell the people at home that Owen Hart had passed away. They also say that Owen Hart's last words were essentially, "Look out, I'm falling." And in his death, even though he knew he was gonna die, he didn't want to hurt anyone else. That just shows the testament to who Owen Hart really was as a person. We all need to strive to be more like Owen Hart and less awful. Vince called Martha after his death, and Vince didn't have any answers right away, and he said, the next person who's going to call you, will have the answers for you. The doctor ended up calling Martha, and he had to let her know that Owen was gone. And Martha, of course, was very grief-stricken. She lost, the love of her life. And but she also knows that she can't let this take over her life. She can't let it affect her in such a strong way, because now she has 2 kids that she has to take care of all by herself, that now all of a sudden don't have a father. Owen's son had heard his mother crying one day, and in this event of her crying, she had said, "What am I gonna do?" It's incredibly sad, and this is really hard to talk about. Oh, fuck. So, in the same day, Martha tells her, children that, Owen died, and that he didn't feel any pain, but he's dead now. Of course, that would have a huge effect on the kids. Oj says he's replayed that moment several times in his head. And how can you forget a moment like that? How can you forget a moment like that? Over the next few days, they would hold his funeral, and a lot of people, a lot of wrestlers, a lot of people other than wrestlers, a lot of family went to the funeral, and they said that not everyone could fit inside the funeral home on the day of his death, and that there were over 1,000 people outside listening to the service as they were broadcasting it through speakers. And that's just a testament of how beloved Owen was as a person, that so many people showed up to his funeral, and that so many people were, there grieving for him. That just showed that Owen was truly a one-of-a-kind person, and that he was just great. He was just great. It's also in this funeral where Martha declares a day of reckoning that will come. And she was on a mission to find out what really happened that day. So Martha goes to the venue where Owen fell, and she even goes up to the catwalk where Owen was moments before he died. And she took her kids as well so that they could have, some sort of closure, and that they wouldn't think later in their lives, well, what if I should have gone there when I did. After looking down, they were at the very, very, very top of the arena. You look at arenas. You guys been to arenas? You look up, they're tall, and this one was no exception. Martha, after this, is shown the effects of, Owen, his ring gear, everything like that. But more importantly, they had the clip that was holding Owen the night he died. And after doing some research, they found that the clip was generally meant for sailing. And the way that it was designed is that it's designed to release on load. So when there's a load, you can press this button and it releases instantly. And that was what Owen was wearing that night. They talk about the hours leading up to the event. The riggers had approached Owen and they wanted to rehearse it, but Owen was like, nah, I've done it before, I got it. But they did the practice anyway, and they found that during the practice, they wanted a faster release because the first time they did it, the release and the drop down was a little bit sloppy. The riggers' final instructions to Owen were to not pull a certain cord, and that he would be fine. But according to Martha, Owen never pulled that cord. Never pulled it. Martha also talks about, she says that she had gotten enough evidence that she felt as though WWE was negligent in his death, that they didn't, that all of this could have been preventable, which all of it could have been preventable, and she now had enough evidence that that she was going to go and sue Vince McMahon. They also bring into note that WWE had changed the rigging company that Owen had previously used in his prior stunts, to say the word, as he would be released from the rope all the way down to the floor. They had changed the company that they were using because Vince wanted to save money. He wanted to save money. He found a cheaper company that would do it. And they had said that Owen would be in the hands of the very best. Which, like Martha Hart said, he wasn't. But how was, Owen going to question WWE? How was he going to question? He just assumed that they, that they were going to protect him, which they didn't. So Martha decides that she is going to sue Vince and the WWE for negligence on his death, which in turn Vince sued her back as well. And due to all of the controversy that was going on with the lawsuit, there was a divide in the Hart family, as some people were for the suit and others weren't. According to Martha, some members of the Hart family didn't speak about it. They didn't want to be involved. And others would work against her by stealing legal documents and giving them to the defense, essentially throwing out their whole entire playbook and giving it to the enemy. And Martha had said, you don't have to support me, but please just don't work against me. There's a lot of controversy in this that you could do a whole video of it on and of itself. If you want to know more about it, you can always look it up. There's plenty of stuff talking about the rivalry. I guess you could say the not rivalry, but the bad blood between Martha Hart and the rest of the Hart family. But yeah, there's a lot of bad blood there. And after a year of fighting the case against Vince, they finally reached a settlement of $18 million. But Martha had said that she didn't want the money. She didn't care about the money because, she just wanted justice. Sure, she had $18 million, but, her family, lost a father. It's not going to bring him back now that they have $18 million. It's just awfully awful, but she just wanted to, get justice. They said that now that the case was closed, that there was some bit of closure, just a tiny little bit. And then they go about talking about how he was really cut before he could be the star that he was meant to be. And that Chris Jericho said, because he's the host and he was also interviewed, that a lot of good people were coming in at the time at the company. A lot of people like Eddie Guerrero, Edge, a lot of people who Owen Hart could have potentially worked with and had a career resurgence. And it's very much possible, but it's that what if scenario that never wins, that what if this happened, that ultimately will stay in our imaginations. What if this didn't happen? And it was totally preventable. That's the sad thing about it. It was totally preventable. And, Vince and himself, Vince and the company, they could have prevented this if they there are certain things that you can't play with, and a human life is one of them. And Vince wanted to save money, and he wanted to do this. He wanted to do this as easily as he could. It's just, that's what makes it sad, is that all of this could have been preventable. And the fact that, you shouldn't be, if you shouldn't be punished, not to say punished, but I was going to bring up a point that, you shouldn't have to fear, saying, no, you shouldn't have to fear repercussions for not wanting to do something. Owen Hart did not want to do the Blue Blazer spot. He did not want to do that spot, but Vince, levied, hey, if you don't come back, you're essentially fired. And that plays into current day WWE, where people think that there is heat on Sami Zayn because he decided to stay home amidst everything with coronavirus. So it plays into modern day WWE still. So there should not be this atmosphere where if you feel as though you are in danger, you feel as though you are uncomfortable to do something, you should not be punished for that. Bottom line. And that's unfortunately what happened to Owen Hart. He could have been this big star. And of course, when it comes to Owen Hart, they talk about him being inducted into the Hall of Fame. That topic of conversation. And Martha, of course, doesn't want WWE to induct Owen into the Hall of Fame because they don't want him glorified and celebrated by the same company that caused his death. And they don't want... Another thing that I read recently was, leading up to this episode, was that Martha, she doesn't want... she knows that the WWE is fake. The Hall of Fame is not really a Hall of Fame. There's no actual, hall, there's no actual building where you can see all the accomplishments of the wrestlers, that it's just a thing. It's a Hall of Fame in name only. but other people, they take it seriously, and they want Owen in that Hall of Fame. But Martha is very vocal that she does not want Owen in the Hall of Fame, and Oj, who is Owen's son, also does not want Owen in the Hall of Fame as well. They end the episode talking about how pure and good Owen was, and that essentially everything that they are now doing with the Owen Hart Foundation, they help out a lot of people, is reminiscent of who Owen truly was as a person. And that's how the episode ended. Oh god, this was probably the hardest one to watch out of the whole entire season. And the Chris Benoit season premiere was also pretty hard to watch, but it was hard on a whole nother level, because we knew what happened, and we knew that, there was just a lot that we didn't know about the death and stuff like that. But I think this one was harder to watch because well, we knew that Owen was a really nice guy. We knew that Owen was someone that was beloved, and that he was genuinely a really nice guy, and he was really pure of heart. That's what makes it sad, and also the fact that all of this could have been prevented. But you guys have heard me. You can take a shot about how many times I said that in this review, and how many people have said it throughout the years. But his legacy will live on. His legacy will live on. He was this amazing wrestler. Go back and watch some of his matches. His matches with Bret Hart were great. And not just that, but he had so many other matches under his belt. Just phenomenal worker. Like, truly a phenomenal worker. And it was just a shame that he was cut before he could really become the superstar that he was meant to be. Also, if you are curious, because this was released the other day, it was the fact that Dark Side of the Ring, along with Pro Wrestling Tees, have come out with 2 brand new shirts. And this is the first piece of Owen Hart merchandise that has been released in over 20 years. If you want to, you can go ahead and check it out on ProWrestlingTees.com. There are 2 shirts, one with Owen and the other one with his insignia, and saying "In Our Hearts Forever." All proceeds go to the Hart Foundation. If you are looking to get some Owen Hart merch, because they are, probably going to be on sale for a limited time only. I already ordered my Owen Hart t-shirt, and this isn't a plug. I mean, sure, it is a plug, but like, they didn't Pro Wrestling. I don't know. Pro Wrestling Tees hasn't paid me to say this. I'm just letting you guys know. If you wanted to pick your guys' self up a shirt from Owen Hart, with proceeds going to the Owen Hart Foundation, you can go ahead and do that. It's just really sad. This story was sad, and on top of that, everything that's happening with Shad Gaspard is really sad. And at least they were able to, I know it's like something that everyone knows, but I think this documentary it attracts more casual people, or more casual fans of wrestling. And if anything, it brings to light how amazing Owen Hart really was, not only as a father, but as a wrestler and as a human being. So if anything, that is what we can leave on. If we're leaving on a positive note, it's that he was an amazing guy, amazing wrestler, amazing father. And, his legacy will continue on and live on for a very, very long time. And with that, we are done with season 2 of Dark Side of the Ring. Thank you guys for joining me. If you've been here through the whole entire ride from New Jack all the way to Owen Hart, thank you guys so much for listening to me talk about this. And this was a really hard episode. But, like I said, his legacy will live on forever. I've been Samuel V, aka the Excellent Reviewer. Make sure you hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And I'll see you guys as soon as I can. Stay safe out there. And remember to tell your loved ones that you love them. Because tomorrow is not guaranteed. So, I'll see you guys as soon as I can. We all need to try to be more like Owen Hart. That's my final message. We all need to try and be more like Owen Hart. Pure of heart.